for being with us for Talking Europe on France 24. Now, this week has seen a new chancellor take the helm in Germany. Olaf Scholz leading a never-tried-before coalition of his own Social Democrats, as well as the Greens and pro-business Liberals. Now, they come to office promising to get a hold on COVID, keep the economy stable, and bring some more liberal changes to the European Union's biggest economy. Now, among those, legalisation of recreational cannabis. This would make Germany the first country in Europe to take this step. Others have decriminalised the drug. Some have legalised specific medical uses. Well, France, meanwhile, has some of the toughest laws against cannabis use in Europe, but it is the continent's biggest consumer of it. Well, debating this issue with us today, Daniel Freund from the German Greens. Thanks for being with us.
Hey.
And with us from France, Véronique Trier-Lenoir from President Macron's centrist Renew Europe group. And I ought to say as well, you are a medical doctor, so we might get some medical insights from you as well. Let's start off then with you, Daniel Freund. Your Green Party, part of that coalition government that is going to, it seems, legalise recreational cannabis use in Germany. What's the thinking behind that policy?
Well, it's something that we as Greens have been fighting for a long time, because we think that the justice system shouldn't dedicate so many resources, so much money, so much personnel in fighting something that in itself isn't really an issue. It is a drug compared to smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, has very little comparatively speaking, health effects, and well regulated with age limits, a good system to bring it to market. We want to do that through the pharmacies, so that there are experts actually selling that in the context of medicine. And of course, there is the big economic advantage of the country. Rather than spending lots of money on the justice system and fighting it and the police, rather to tax it and create revenues. We're thinking somewhere between 4.5 and 5 billion euros a year that the German government could tax the consumption of cannabis.
Véronique Trier-Lenoir, we know that President Macron has said he will not legalise cannabis in France while he is in office. Why such a strong position? And do you agree with any of the arguments that Daniel Freund has put forward?
I agree with the pros arguments of Daniel. I think, in fact, that we would have a strong social and economical interest to think about it. As a medical doctor, I also have to keep in mind the arguments against. We know that mental health and psychiatric disorders may issue from cannabis consumption, as well as, of course, dependence, troubles in relationships, etc. So it is, to be taken into consideration, as well as the possible gateway effect, incitation to go to even stronger drugs. But as a medical doctor, I'm very happy that my country has started an experimentation on therapeutic cannabis, which, to my opinion, is a good thing and will probably have the consequence to legalize the therapeutic cannabis. It is also, in my opinion, a sector where we could maybe start to think about a kind of harmonization between very different European countries. Very many disparities, I agree with it, in terms of possession, consumption of cannabis, in terms of penalties. But maybe from the experience of therapeutic cannabis, we could, come to maybe not common legislation, but at least a start.
I just wanted to put forward to you that France, as I said, is the biggest consumer of cannabis in Europe. Just a couple of statistics. This is from 2016. 41% of 15 to 64-year-olds had consumed it at least once in their life. The European average at that point was just under 19%. So in France, banning cannabis clearly has not worked in practice. People are still using it. Does that make you think that there should be more ways opening up to bring some safety, at least, into this situation that you mentioned as a doctor?
I fully agree that we have to think about it. we are not in advance to think about it, but we have to. President Macron has taken a strong position, but he has also initiated a large national debate. And in France, the public opinion is in favor of at least decriminalization and even legalization. So I think that we will move one step forwards and maybe many steps forwards. The example of Germany will certainly be an interesting one for us because of the proximity between our two countries. So the story is not told forever.
Daniel Freund, I wanted to ask you, why full legalisation of recreational use as well as medicinal, instead of just decriminalisation, just giving the example of Portugal, where, in fact, all drugs were decriminalised 20 years ago, and there has been a dramatic fall in drug-related crime, in overdoses and things. Why go as far as full legalisation?
Well, we have seen that, I mean, a lot of European countries have, to some extent, decriminalized the possession and the consumption of cannabis. But some of the issues that we have with drug use that remains then illegal, but is maybe not punished or is not followed up on, that some of the problems remain. There is problems of product safety because it is not a fully regulated market, because it remains an illegal product. We see in the Netherlands, for example, that the sale of small quantities in coffee shops is legal, yet the coffee shops aren't legally allowed to buy the quantities necessary. So we have bizarre market distortions that create either market problems or actually invite organized crime to take over part of this semi-legal market, and that we do not want. We want a legal industry. We don't want organized crime to take over the sale of cannabis or to continue holding the sale of cannabis in Germany, and that's why we're proposing full legalization.
Just in terms of quality control, of course, it seems that a lot of people grow it at home, so there is a big element there that the authorities wouldn't be in control of, people growing their own cannabis. Is that a concern?
I think, I mean, people having a plant or two at home are not the issue here. The issues that we see in Germany are mostly with organized gangs, right? That organize the wholesale of drugs. And yes, indeed, they don't sell cannabis only, but they sell other drugs. And it is also a conscious choice that we're opting for legalization for cannabis because it is very safe compared to other drugs, whereas we have to have a very different approach when it comes to methamphetamines or heroin, cocaine, other hard drugs.
Just picking up on that point about the gangs, the policing, Véronique Trier-Lenoir, France spends more than 560 million euros every year on fighting specifically cannabis trafficking. That's a lot of money that could be freed up by a legalization.
Freed up and even balanced by taxes. So economically speaking, it is really an issue. If I may, I have a question on, would not this gang go to stronger drugs once cannabis will be legalized?
I mean, the gangs already, I guess, in many cases sell stronger drugs, but taking away that market and allowing consumers to legally buy cannabis takes a large chunk of the revenue away, and then makes it also easier to deal with what's left. But even on hard drugs, I think the example that you have named from Portugal is a good example, and that you need to treat drug addiction as a medical condition. Rather than a crime just or something that you need to declare war on. We see the US war on drugs for decades now that basically leads to a militarization, lots of dead people, shootings, and is not resolving the issue of people taking drugs. So I think the approach of dealing with it as a medical problem is the right approach.
We've seen that the current health minister in France, Olivier Véran, he was the person who put forward the idea of experimenting with legalising medical marijuana use, Elise. It's taken a very long time for that to actually get a green light at the National Assembly. Why do you think it is, Véronique Trier-Lenoir, that so few politicians in France share your opinion that there could be some trial of this liberalisation of cannabis?
Well, as I said, the thoughts are very splitted. There are pros and against, depending on the generation, mostly depending on the generation. But again, even if long, it's one step forward, which I think might be the first one.
And Daniel Freund, one last question to you. I've read that the coalition is planning to review this legalisation after 4 years. Does that mean that it could be completely undone after 4 years? Do you expect that could happen?
I think the experiences that we have seen in many European countries point in another direction. And I would generally advise us all as Europeans, we're not approaching this alone. We have free movement in Europe. Young people might come to Germany to take advantage of the liberalization in Germany. So it makes sense that we look at the impacts that our different legislation in this area has and learn from each other. Those things that work well, we should all take as an example. And where certain things can be improved, we can also take over the experiences that others have already made.
Certainly sounds like your French neighbours will be paying close attention, at least. I'd like to thank you both very much for taking part in the discussion, Véronique Trier-Lenoir and Daniel Freund. Thanks to you for watching the programme as well. Hope to see you soon for more European news on France 24.